I am 61 years old. My hands are rough. My back hurts every morning. My hair went fully white before I turned 55. I am not a rich man, not a powerful man, not a man who has ever asked for more than what God gave him. My name is Harold Eugene Mast, and I have worked 32 years at the same water treatment facility in a small town in Georgia. Quiet job, honest work. I come home smelling like chlorine and pipe metal. My wife used to say I smelled like a swimming pool. She used to laugh when she said it. She used to laugh a lot. But that night, the night this whole thing started, nobody was laughing. Not me, not her, not the federal agents who showed up at my door 6 days later. That night, I found something in my wife's bag that broke my heart in two. And what I did next, out of pain, out of foolishness, out of the kind of grief that only a man who has loved one woman for 38 years can feel. That small, stupid, desperate act, replacing one little bottle with another, accidentally unraveled a federal undercover operation that had been running for over 2 years. And in the wreckage of all of it, I learned the truth. A truth my wife had been carrying alone. A truth that made me fall to my knees and weep like a child. Stay with me, please, because this story, my story, is not what you think it is. Let me paint you a picture of my life before that night. My wife's name is Dorothy. I call her. We met when we were both 23 years old at a church social in Macon, Georgia. She was wearing a yellow dress and eating potato salad and arguing with the pastor about whether green beans should have bacon in them. She said yes, she was right then. She has been right about most things since. We got married in 1986. Small ceremony, her father cried. My mother cried. I stood there in a rented suit trying not to faint. We had one son. His name is Marcus. He is now 34 years old, and he is, or was, I should say, the pride of my life. Marcus did everything right, graduated top of his class, went to university on a partial scholarship, got himself a good job as a logistics manager for a distribution company, bought a house 3 towns over, and then Marcus married Renee. Now, I want to be careful here. I want to be fair. Renee is not a bad person. She is not evil, but she is the kind of woman who measures people by what they own. She grew up in a family with money, and somewhere along the way she decided that a man's worth could be calculated the same way you calculate the square footage of a house. When she looked at me, she saw a small number. She never said it with her mouth, not at first, but she said it with her eyes every single time she visited. She said it in the way she touched things in my house carefully, like she was afraid the plainness might rub off on her. She said it in the way she spoke to Dot, softly, slowly, like my wife was a child who needed simple instructions. Marcus saw none of this, or maybe he saw it and chose to look away. That is a different kind of pain, watching your child choose comfort over truth. My daughter, I should mention her too. Her name is Angela. She lives in Tennessee. She is not in this story very much, but she matters. She matters more than anyone realized until the very end. Now, my life 6 months before that night. Dot had changed. I don't mean she became someone else overnight. It was slow, subtle. Like a photograph fading in a window, you don't notice it day by day. But one morning you look up and you can barely make out the faces anymore. She started going out more, not dramatic going out, not obvious, just the little things. She would say she was going to the pharmacy and come back 90 minutes later. She started carrying a bigger purse. She started keeping her phone face down on the counter, which she had never done in 38 years of marriage. She started whispering on calls in the bathroom. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was a foolish old man with an imagination. I told myself that Dorothy Elaine Mast, who had been my wife through job losses and the death of 2 parents and a miscarriage that we never fully healed from, would never hurt me in that way. I told myself that every single night, and then one Tuesday evening, I found her bag open on the kitchen chair, and I saw it. I was not snooping. I want to make that very clear, because it matters to me, even now. I was not the kind of husband who goes through his wife's things. In 38 years, I had never once opened her purse without asking. I was raised by a woman who told me that a person's bag is their private world, and you do not enter someone's private world uninvited. But that evening, I knocked the bag off the chair while reaching for my reading glasses on the counter behind it. The bag fell, things spilled out, her wallet, a receipt, a pack of tissues, a small notebook, her reading glasses, and a small bottle of personal lubricant. Now, if that were simply a small bottle of personal lubricant, the kind sold for couples, the kind we had used ourselves over the years, I might not have thought twice. But this was not that kind. This was a brand specifically marketed to men, for men. The label said so clearly. It had a dark blue cap and silver lettering, and it was a brand I had never seen in our bathroom, never seen in our bedroom, never purchased myself. I stood in my kitchen for a very long time. The clock above the stove ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the neighbor's dog was barking at something in the dark. I am not a violent man. I am not a dramatic man. I am an old man who processes pain slowly, like water moving through sediment. So I did not confront her. Not that night. Instead, and God forgive me, because I have asked him many times, I did something foolish. I took that bottle to the garage. I found a nearly identical small bottle, same size, same shape, darker label, that I used for gluing metal pipe fittings. Industrial super glue, the kind that bonds in seconds and holds under extreme pressure. I emptied the lubricant bottle in the sink. I refilled it carefully with the super glue. I put the cap back on. I put it back in her bag exactly where I found it. And then I sat in my armchair in the living room, and I waited for Dot to come home. She came home at 8:47 p.m. I remember the time because the news was on. "Hey, honey," she said, setting her keys on the hook by the door. "Did you eat?" "I ate," I said. She kissed me on the top of my head, just like always. I said nothing. She went to bed early, said she was tired. I stayed in the armchair until midnight, and I did not sleep at all that night. I thought I was protecting myself. I thought I was the one doing something clever. I had no idea, not the faintest idea, what I had actually done. 2 days later, Marcus and Renee came for Sunday dinner. It was Dot's idea. She made pot roast and sweet potato casserole and a peach cobbler. She cleaned the whole house. She wore the blue blouse that Marcus always said was his favorite color on her. I sat at the table and watched my family eat and talk and laugh, and I felt like a ghost at my own dinner table. Renee was in fine form that evening. She had recently redecorated their guest bedroom. She described it in detail. All the choices she'd made, the thread count of the new linens, the specific shade of white she'd chosen for the walls. "Not just white, Harold," she said to me with a small patient smile. "Alabaster, there's a difference. Is that right?" I said. Marcus talked about a promotion possibility at work. He was excited. I was happy for him. I truly was. At some point, Renee looked around the kitchen and said, not to anyone in particular, but we all heard it, "You know, Mom, if you ever want help updating this kitchen, just say the word." Marcus and I were actually looking at some really beautiful designs, modern farmhouse style. "Clean it up a little." Dot smiled. "I like my kitchen," she said quietly. "Of course," Renee said. "Of course you do." I said nothing. Marcus glanced at me. He knew that tone in Renee's voice, I think, but he said nothing either. After dinner, while Dot and Marcus were doing dishes and Renee was sitting on the porch on her phone, I went to the garage. I sat in my old camping chair between the workbench and the wall. I just sat there in the smell of motor oil and sawdust and old tools. Marcus found me there 20 minutes later. Dad, he said. He sat on an overturned bucket. You okay? I'm fine, son. You were quiet at dinner. I'm often quiet. He was quiet too for a moment. Then, Renee doesn't mean anything by it. You know that, right? She grew up different. She doesn't realize how it sounds sometimes. I looked at my son. This boy I had coached Little League for. This boy I had driven to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when he broke his wrist falling out of a tree. This boy for whom I had worked extra shifts 2 winters in a row, so he could afford his school trip to Washington, D.C. I know, son, I said, and I said nothing else. He patted my shoulder and went back inside. I stayed in the garage, and I thought about that bottle. About what I had done. About Dorothy coming home 90 minutes late from the pharmacy. About the phone kept face down. And I felt old. I felt very, very old. 6 days after I found that bottle. It was a Thursday morning. I was home. I work early shifts and was back by 10 a.m. Dot had left about an hour before, said she had errands. The knock at the door was hard, official, the kind of knock that doesn't apologize for itself. I opened the door. 2 people stood on my porch, a man and a woman, both in dark jackets, both showing me credentials before I had even finished opening the door. Federal agents. The woman said their names, but I have to be honest. My brain went white with shock, and I don't remember them in that moment. What I remember is the badge, gold and real and absolutely serious. Mr. Harold Mast. The woman said. Yes, I said. May we come in? We need to talk to you about your wife. And that was when my legs went strange. I held the door frame. I breathed. Is she hurt? I asked. Is Dorothy hurt? She's physically fine, Mr. Mast, the man said. But we need to talk. It's important. Can we sit down? We sat at my kitchen table, at the same table where 2 days ago my family had eaten pot roast and Renee had talked about alabaster walls. The woman agent leaned forward. She looked at me with calm, careful eyes. Mr. Mast, she said, your wife has been working with our agency for the past 26 months. I heard the words. They did not make sense. I'm sorry, I said. My wife Dorothy Mast. Yes, sir. Doing what? The 2 agents exchanged a look. Your wife? The woman said slowly, is a confidential informant. She has been helping us build a case against a criminal network operating in this region. A network involved in trafficking, money laundering, and several federal violations we can't fully disclose to you at this time. I sat there. The refrigerator hummed. Last week, the man agent said, and now his voice was careful, measured. An undercover contact passed your wife a specific item during a routine drop. That item was critical to an operation we have been running for over 2 years. Yesterday, we discovered that that item was compromised, tampered with. He looked at me steadily. Mr. Mast, we need to ask you, did you have any contact with your wife's personal bag in the last week? Did you touch or alter anything in it? And I felt the blood drain from my face. Because I knew what I had done. The bottle, I whispered. Both agents went very still. Sir, the woman said. And I told them everything. They were at my kitchen table for 3 hours. In those 3 hours, I learned things about my wife of 38 years that made me feel like I was hearing about a stranger, and at the same time like I was finally, truly meeting her for the first time. Dorothy Mast, my Dorothy, my Dot in the yellow dress, arguing about bacon and green beans, had been approached by federal agents 26 months ago. It had started small, a conversation, a man she had seen at the pharmacy, a man she had seen there 3 times in 2 weeks, always watching her specifically. She had reported it to the local police, almost as an afterthought. The police had forwarded it to the federal field office. What followed was a careful, slow process. The agents explained to her what they were investigating. They explained what they needed. They explained the risks. Dorothy had agreed. She had agreed because, and this is the part that put a crack right through the center of my chest, the criminal network they were investigating had been using the water treatment facility where I worked as a site for one of their operations. Someone on the inside of my workplace was helping them, and the agents were afraid that if I knew, if I was told, the wrong person might find out that investigators were closing in, and I might be hurt. She was protecting me. For 26 months, my wife had been living a double life, not for betrayal, not for selfishness, not for another man. She had been doing it to keep me safe. She drove to dead, dropped locations instead of pharmacies. She carried items in her purse that she couldn't explain. She kept her phone face down because her handler called on a specific number she couldn't risk me seeing. And the bottle of men's lubricant that I found in her bag, it was not what I thought. It was not what any man would think finding such a thing. The lubricant bottle was a specially prepared container with a false bottom. Inside the false bottom was a micro memory card containing encrypted data, evidence that had taken 8 months to gather. The bottle had been passed to Dorothy at a dead drop location by an undercover male agent posing as a romantic contact. The branding, men's product, was intentional. It was the specific identification marker for that operation. If anyone other than Dorothy's handler opened it, they would see nothing suspicious, just an ordinary product. Except I had emptied it and filled it with super glue. The micro card, worth 2 years of undercover work, containing financial records, communications, and the identities of 4 high-level network members, had been sitting in a container of industrial adhesive for 6 days. The agents worked with their technical team. They were able to recover approximately 60% of the data. Enough, they told me, to still make significant arrests, but the operation had to be moved up. Certain elements of their plan had to be abandoned. 2 undercover agents had to be immediately extracted for their safety, because the timeline was now compromised. The woman agent looked at me across my kitchen table. "Mr. Mast," she said, "your wife asked us not to tell you. She didn't want you to feel responsible for any of this. But we are obligated to inform you of certain facts now, given that you are an inadvertent participant." "Where is she?" I asked. "Where is Dorothy right now?" "She's at our field office. She's safe. She wanted to come home, but we needed to speak with you first. I want to see my wife," I said. My voice barely worked when I said it. She came through the door at 4:17 p.m. She looked tired. She looked older than she had that morning. She looked like a woman who had been carrying a very heavy thing for a very long time and had just set it down for the first time. She stopped in the kitchen doorway when she saw me sitting at the table. We looked at each other. "Harold," she said. "Dot," I said. She sat across from me, the same seats we had sat in for 38 years at every meal, every conversation, every moment of our shared life. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you're angry. I know I kept things from you." I'm not angry," I said. She blinked. "Harold, I am not angry," I said again. I am a fool, Dorothy. I am a stupid, jealous, foolish old man, and I am so sorry." Her face changed, her eyes filled. I thought, I started, I had to stop, try again. I found that bottle. And I thought, God forgive me, I thought you were, I thought there was someone else. I thought, oh, Harold. She reached across the table and took both my hands in hers. Oh, no. "Oh, sweetheart, no, I know," I said. "I know now, but I didn't know then. And instead of just asking you, Dot, I did the most foolish, childish, petty thing I have ever done in my life, and I may have hurt people because of it. Real people, people doing real work." She squeezed my hands. "You were scared," she said. "That's not an excuse." "No," she said, But it's a reason. And I drove you to it. I kept things from you. I know I wasn't supposed to tell you, Harold. I know the rules said. You were protecting me, I said. The agents told me everything. You were protecting me. You're my husband, she said, like that explained everything. And it did. It explained everything. We sat at that table for a long time, holding hands, not saying much. Light changed outside the window. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. 38 years of marriage, and I had almost destroyed it with a bottle of superglue and a heart full of wrong assumptions. If there is one thing I will carry from this story until my last breath, it is this: I never asked. I found something I didn't understand, and instead of asking the woman I had loved for 4 decades, I acted, I assumed. I let my fear become cruelty. That is a lesson I will not forget. We called Marcus that evening. We needed to tell him at least some of it, because the agents had told us that the arrests would be public news within 72 hours, and our name, my name, might be mentioned peripherally in press releases. We didn't want him blindsided. Marcus drove over. That night with Renee, they sat in our living room. Dot sat beside me on the couch, and I told them all of it. The operation, Dorothy's role, the bottle, what I had done, what it had cost. When I finished, there was silence. Then Renee spoke first. Wait, she said. Let me make sure I understand this. She looked at Dorothy. You were working with the FBI. Federal Task Force, Dot said quietly. Yes. Renee looked at me, then at Dorothy, then around our small, plain living room, the room she had always looked at with faint disdain. The outdated furniture, the family photos crowding every shelf, the braided rug that had been there since before Marcus was born. I watched her face as something moved behind her eyes, a recalculation, a reappraisal. Mom, Marcus said softly, you were doing this, all of this, and you never said anything to us. I couldn't, baby, Dot said, rules of the operation. But for 2 years, you carried this alone? I had help, she said, and she looked at me when she said it, even though I hadn't helped, even though I hadn't known. She looked at me because after 38 years, I was still her partner, and she still thought of us as a team even when I was failing her. That nearly undid me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Dad, when you believed Mom might be, why didn't you come to me? What would you have done, son? He opened his mouth, closed it. You would have come to me, I said gently, and I would have been embarrassed. And nothing would have been solved. I should have asked your mother. That's all. I should have just asked her. Renee had gone very quiet. She was looking at her lap, and for the first time in the years I had known her, she looked genuinely uncertain, like the ground she always walked on so confidently had shifted slightly underfoot. I owe you both an apology, she said eventually. We all looked at her. She kept her eyes down. I haven't been kind. Not really. Not the way I should be. She looked up at Dorothy. That thing I said about the kitchen. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. She glanced at me. Harold. I'm sorry. I nodded. That was all. I didn't make a speech. I didn't say I told you so or make her feel smaller than she had already made herself feel. I just nodded, because I am an old man, and old men who have lived enough life know that the moment someone recognizes their own wrong is a fragile moment. You don't stomp on fragile moments. 48 hours later, the arrests made local news. 14 people were taken into custody across 3 counties. Among them, and this is the detail that put ice in my stomach, was a man I knew. A man I had worked alongside at the water treatment facility for 11 years. A man I had eaten lunch with hundreds of times, talked about football with, lent tools to. He had been using his access to our facility as part of the network operation, concealment of materials, falsification of records. He had been watched for 2 years, and Dorothy had been part of the chain that confirmed his involvement. I will not use his name here. He has a family. His family didn't know. His children are innocent. Some pain should stay private. But when I saw his face on the news, I sat down very heavily in my armchair. Because this is what fear and assumptions cost you. I had spent 6 months suspecting my wife of betrayal, watching her with quiet aching suspicion, marinating in my own worst thoughts, when all along the actual danger, the actual dark thing, was sitting right next to me every day at the lunch table. The people we suspect are often not the ones we should be watching, and the ones we trust with our assumptions. Our fears, our silences are often the ones we are hurting most. The agents contacted us again to say that the 60% of data they'd recovered was sufficient. Charges were filed. The operation, though moved up ahead of schedule, was considered largely successful. Dorothy was officially thanked, privately. No public mention of her name, per the agreement. She came home from that final meeting, sat in her kitchen chair, and drank a cup of tea. "How do you feel?" I asked her. "Tired," she said. "But good." The tired kind of good. I brought her a piece of toast because she hadn't eaten properly in days. She smiled at me the way she used to smile, the full version, the one that reached her eyes. "You know what I want," she said. "What?" "I want you to take me somewhere for a few days, somewhere quiet. Just you and me." "Where?" "Somewhere with a porch, and sweet tea, and absolutely no federal agents." I laughed. For the first time in what felt like years, I laughed a real laugh, and Dorothy laughed with me. "I should tell you about Angela. My daughter called 2 days after the news broke. She is not someone who calls easily. She is quiet, like me, a woman who thinks long before she speaks. 'Daddy,' she said when I picked up. 'Hey, sweetheart.' Silence for a moment, then I knew. I sat up straighter. 'What?' 'I knew about Mama,' she said. 'Not everything, but some of it. She called me about 8 months ago. She was scared, and she needed to tell someone, and she knew Marcus would panic, and she knew you." She stopped. "She knew I would try to fix it." I said. "She knew you would put yourself in danger trying to fix it," Angela said. "So she told me, and I kept it. I've been praying about it every day for 8 months, Daddy. Every single day." I was quiet. "Are you angry with me?" She asked. "No, baby." I said. "No. She loves you more than anything in this world." Angela said. "Everything she did because she couldn't stand the thought of anything happening to you." I pressed my hand over my eyes. I am 61 years old. I am a grandfather figure in my neighborhood. I coach youth baseball on Saturdays. I am not a man who cries easily. I cried then, "Dad." Angela said softly, "You've spent your whole life being strong for us, quiet, dependable, never asking for anything, never making a fuss. I just want you to know we see it. We see you, even when it didn't look like it. We see everything you've done for this family." I couldn't speak for a moment. Then, "Come visit soon. I managed. I'm already packing," she said. The weekend after everything settled, Marcus came over alone, without Renee, which was unusual. He said she was giving us space, that she had felt ashamed of how she'd behaved over the years, and wanted to take some time before facing us again. I respected that. I respected it more than if she had come with a performance of apology. Marcus and I sat on the back porch. Evening. The yard was quiet. Fireflies were just starting up in the tall grass at the far edge of the property. He had a glass of iced tea. I had water. We sat and watched the yard and didn't speak for a while, which is a thing fathers and sons who understand each other can do. Finally, Marcus said, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "When Renee said those things about the kitchen, about the house, when she looked at you like you were less than all those times, he was looking at the fireflies. You never said anything. You just went quiet. I always thought you were just being passive. Like you were just letting it happen." I said, "But I don't think that anymore." He said, I think that silence it wasn't weakness, was it?" "What do you think it was?" I asked. He thought for a long while. "Dignity," he said finally. I nodded slowly. "There's a verse," I said, "not going to preach at you, but there's a verse that says, 'A gentle answer turns away wrath.' I'm not a perfect man, Marcus. Far from it. I made a terrible mistake with that bottle. I let my fear turn into a foolish action. But when other people are unkind, when they look at you as less, you have a choice. You can fight back and become what they think you are. Or you can stay still and let them see, over time, exactly who you are. Marcus was quiet. The house is still standing. I said, your mother and I are still here. And Renee, I think Renee is becoming someone better than she was, not because I argued with her, but because she had time to watch, to observe, to eventually feel ashamed of herself on her own terms. He nodded slowly. I love you, Dad, he said. I love you too, son. Fireflies, evening, the two of us on that porch that Renee had probably never thought much of. It was one of the best evenings of my life. What I know now that I did not know before. We did take that trip. Dorothy and I drove 4 hours to a small inn in the North Georgia mountains. There was a porch. There was sweet tea. There was not a single federal agent. We sat on that porch for 3 days and we talked more honestly than we had talked in years. We talked about the fear that had quietly grown between us, not from anything either of us had done intentionally, but from the ordinary silence that creeps into a long marriage when two people stop asking the questions that scare them. I told her about the exact feeling I had when I found that bottle. I described it in detail, the shock, the cold spreading through my chest, the way the kitchen clock sounded suddenly very loud. I did not soften it or make myself look better. She listened. She held my hand. She did not say I understand too quickly, because she is a wise woman, and she knows that understanding takes time to actually arrive. And then she told me about her fear, the fear of the first phone call from the agents, when she realized the man watching her at the pharmacy was connected to something dark. The fear of saying yes to the operation, knowing what it meant. The fear, the constant low hum of fear, that one day something would go wrong and I would be hurt, and it would be because of her. I just wanted you safe, she said. That's all I have ever wanted. Since the day we got married. I just wanted you safe. I know, I said, I know what I learned from all of this, and I share it with you now, not because I think I am wise, but because I paid a very high price for it, and maybe you shouldn't have to. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes the silence between two people who love each other is full of things that need to be said. Ask the hard question. Open the hard conversation. Do not let your fear become a story you tell yourself in the dark. Assumptions are a form of disrespect. When I found that bottle and decided, in my own head, what it meant without asking, without trusting, without giving my wife of 38 years the basic respect of a question, I was treating her as a suspect in the courthouse of my own fear. She deserved better. She had always deserved better. Quiet strength is still strength. All those years I sat silent while Renee looked at my life with polite disdain. I was not being weak. I was trusting that my life, honest, humble, hard-working life I had built, would speak for itself in the end. And it did. It always does. The people protecting you the most are often the ones you cannot see. Dorothy stood in the gap for me for 26 months. Angela carried a secret for 8 months to protect both her parents. They did these things quietly, without credit, without thanks. Look around you. Who is standing in the gap for you right now that you haven't thanked? And finally, this one is for the men who are like me, the quiet ones, the ones who grow old holding things they never say. Talk to your wife, just talk to her. All of this, the compromised operation, the federal agents at my table, the months of quiet suffering, all of it could have been avoided if I had simply sat across from Dorothy at our kitchen table and said, Dot, I found something. Can you help me understand it? That's it. That's the whole lesson. Just ask, just talk, just trust the person you chose. Dorothy and I will celebrate our 39th anniversary next spring. I am already making plans. Nothing fancy, a nice dinner, her favorite flowers, yellow ones, because that's what she was wearing when I first saw her. Maybe a drive somewhere quiet where we can sit on a porch and watch the evening. Come in. Angela visited last month. She and her mother sat in the kitchen for 5 hours talking. I sat in the living room and listened to them laugh and felt something settle in my chest that had been restless for a very long time. Marcus and Renee came for dinner last Sunday. Renee helped Dot with the dishes afterward, unprompted. She stood at that old sink in that old kitchen, and she washed dishes, and she said quietly to Dorothy, "I really do love this kitchen, Mom." And Dorothy said, "I know, baby. Me too. I am 61 years old. My hands are rough. My back hurts every morning. And I am, without any doubt in the world, the luckiest man I know. Thank you for listening to my story.